This Duke basketball season continues to just absolutely fly by. Feels like just yesterday we're talking about countdown to craziness and all the excitement that we've got going into the year. Now we just have 3 games left in the regular season, an ACC tournament run, and oh yeah, our sights are on 6. Let's get the Duke basketball team a national championship.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome on into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us today on Thursday, February 27th, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics with a big-time focus on what's taking place with this Duke men's basketball team. It's a great team so far this season and a lot to discuss here on Locked On Blue Devils, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, we're going to talk about the win that Duke had over Miami. 3 games left in the regular season. Still the uncertainty around Tyrese Proctor and his availability moving forward. All that and more coming up in conversations today with our good pal Josh Cox here on today's show. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcast. Go ahead and leave us a 5-star rating and written review. Like this video, if you will, when you watch it on YouTube. Share it with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to our YouTube channel as we're continuing to grow our audience over there. We're on X at LO_Blue Devils, and you can find me there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. So without further ado, joining us on the program here today, the aforementioned Josh Cox is back with us once again, man. And like I said in the open, it feels like just yesterday we're talking about when is this season ever going to get here? There's so much hype around the team. We're seeing Cooper Flagg dominate in the showcase event with Team USA over the summer. 2 players returning from last year's roster, a lot of transfers joining the squad this year. And now we look, holy cow, man, just 3 games left in the regular season.
Yeah, and Duke is exactly, where many people, thought they would be. But it is amazing, how long the season can seem, but then also how quickly it goes by. And all the things that you're predicting early on in the season or preseason, and now you're seeing, what has come to pass. And there's teams are now, I feel like they are who they are now. We're getting close to the end, and this Duke team is in a good spot. Obviously, there's some question marks that we're going to discuss today, but another dominant road conference win last night in Coral Gables.
Yeah, big time win for the Hurricanes, for Duke over the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes haven't had very many big time wins this season when you look at it. And it's crazy, man. The run that Duke's been on really in this stretch of games since the Clemson loss in particular, it feels like if you miss the first 90 seconds of the game or whatever it is for Duke to get their first bucket, then you don't have a whole lot to watch at that point because the game's decided. I mean, Duke is then kind of coasting to a wire-to-wire victory, man. It's unbelievable kind of the run that they're on here. Yes, they're winning games. Yes, they're winning them by a ton. But even the first few minutes aren't that intriguing because as soon as Duke scores, they get themselves in a rhythm, getting a couple of stops. The opposition has no chance.
Well, yeah, I mean, I believe the last 5 games, which would be post-Clemson, I think it's 31 points is the average margin of victory or something insane like that. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, in the game at Miami, I mean, I believe Duke got up 10-2 or something like that early in the game. And it's just like the game's over. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but, I mean, the game is technically not over. But when Duke starts out and they're ahead 8 points in the first 2.5 minutes of the game, it's kind of like, okay, it's going to be another one of those nights. And, not everybody has to play perfect either on this Duke team for them to win these games by these margins. And so, yeah, it's been Duke's on a burner. And maybe looking back at that Clemson game, I know you always say this, like, that's a good loss. But really, Duke hadn't lost in 17 games before that Clemson game. And I'm not saying that Duke was getting complacent, but it's kind of like, okay, well, let's hit a little bit of a reset button here. Let's refocus. And Duke has. And, the Knipples and the Cooper Flaggs and the going down the lines. Isaiah Evans now, all those guys seem to be, refocused and Duke's playing at the highest level that it's played all season.
16-1 in conference play. They're 25-3 overall. Duke has just Florida State, Wake Forest, and North Carolina left on their schedule. I made the point yesterday on the program, just kind of looking at it, and we've had this active conversation throughout the course of the year, like how down the ACC is, how dominant Duke has been. Is there a world in which Duke can top what North Carolina did a season ago with a 17-3 record within the league? And I went even further. Now I'm looking at it, Josh, and heck, Louisville and Clemson are also in a position right now to have a better record than North Carolina had last season, which prior to last season, no one would have thought someone's going 17-3 in conference play throughout the course of the year. It's nuts, man, because obviously I want this to be something that Duke can sort of claim hold to and that sort of thing, but it's still very much alive that a couple of different teams this season have an opportunity to have the best run through the league ever.
Yeah, for sure. And it is the good and the bad, I guess, of the new conference and as many teams as are in there, because you would want, I mean, in a perfect world, when you have, three teams that have kind of separated themselves at the top, it'd be nice if you were playing a home and away, Louisville and Clemson, and you could really get a feel, and they could get a feel for how good they are. But the way the schedules, obviously are now, you're playing certain teams one time, and like with Clemson there, it would be nice to have a return game. I know Duke would love it. I think Clemson would love it, right? Like, hey, was that a fluke, or like, are we really that good? And, that's the unfortunate thing about the scheduling. Now it is nice to play some new teams, and the expansion is what it is. But yeah, it is a little bit unique. And what it has turned out this year is you have three teams that have really strong records due to, I believe, primarily that they're three really good teams. I think secondarily, it's also the schedule and who they did and did not have to play, multiple times. Yep.
So in this game against Miami, Duke loses Tyrese Proctor to injury late in the first half. He did not return in the game. John Shire was talking about a knee injury and that imaging would be done. At the time that you and I are having this conversation, Josh, we have no idea the outcome or the results of those, the imaging and what took place, what they found with Tyrese Proctor. Before we get into that specifically, what's lost in all of this, and I'm glad that John Shire pointed this out in his press conference following the game before even being asked a question, was that Tyrese Proctor became the 70th player in Duke history to score 1,000 points in his career. There have been a whole lot of basketball players to come through this Duke program. Only 70 of them at this point have scored 1,000 points. That's worth celebrating, particularly in a day and age where it feels like, A, we either have people here for just one season before they head off to the NBA, or, they're leaving and going to another school, not playing it out, all these various things. Now we've got another guy joining the 1,000-point club.
Yeah, I would say school records are going to become a thing, of the past. Those are really going to be, historical. Your Johnny Dawkins, your JJ Reddicks, those type, your Shane Battier, those records are going to be very difficult. But, in the third season here at Duke, I think it's pretty remarkable. Not only that, he scored 1,000 points, but if you really look at his freshman, sophomore season, there were so many ups and downs for Tyrese. And for him to have 1,000 points in his third season at Duke is pretty remarkable considering the first two seasons and the teams that he played on. So, yeah, kudos to him. And unfortunately, the injury last night, and as you mentioned, man, just, crossing your fingers that it's just a sprain or something that's going to keep him out for a little bit. And, you never know. You never know on that knee, man. You can't tell by looking at the injury. Those things are just, you just got to wait and see.
Yeah, some of them look like absolutely nothing happened, and it's the most devastating injury in the whole wide world. Some of them look like, oh my gosh, is this guy ever going to be able to walk again or use his knees properly? And it's like, yeah, totally fine. So to your point, no clue what's going on there. So hopefully it's good news that we get for Tyrese Proctor following his injury there. We'll continue to kind of talk about this with Tyrese Proctor and how he plans to come back for the Duke team and so much more after we take this first break of today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. We'll be back here in just a moment. All right, Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by our friends over at Fabric by Gerber Life. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes, and in so many cases, no health exam is required. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. The peace of mind is amazing. It's affordable coverage. You can get $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. So protecting your loved ones doesn't have to break the bank. Once again, meetfabric.com. That is meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Fabric is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Let's keep the show rolling. Josh Cox back with me here today. We're talking about Duke basketball. Mentioned the Tyrese Proctor injury a moment ago, what this could mean moving forward. We're seeing Isaiah Evans on an absolute tear as of late. What are you seeing from Mr. Slim out there, Josh?
Well, you're seeing a guy who showed the flash of this, beginning at the Auburn game. We're obviously Duke fans will remember that game probably forever. How he came in and kind of rescued the Blue Devils there in the first half of that game. But what you're seeing now is, I believe, the maturation in real time of Isaiah Evans as a prospect, as a real basketball player. And what that means to me is, you're seeing him compete at a very high level on the defensive end. And I'll be honest with you, having just seen some highlights of high school and kind of, thinking that like, Isaiah Evans is fill in the blank, this type of player. I was not expecting much from him on the defensive end, and he has absolutely proved me wrong there in my expectation. He competes at a high level. In fact, he was interviewed early on in the season, and I believe it was after that Auburn game where he said, "Hey, I came to Duke because I wanted it to be difficult. I didn't want the easy road, and I'm going to stay on the court not because of my offense, but I'll be able to stay on the court because I'm competing on the defensive end." And we've seen that. So that's the first thing to me that stands out, ironically, is that he's competing on the defensive end. But the second thing that sticks out is, after that heater Auburn game, for the next few games, it was like anytime Isaiah got in the game, it was like, get his shot off, like it didn't matter if he was double teamed. It didn't matter if there were, 4 hands in his face, whatever it may be, get the shot off. And what you're seeing, I think, over the last 2 to 3 games, he still has the quick release. He's still hunting his shot, but he's also understanding that I'm not coming in just for like 6 or 7 minutes here. And I don't have to get up 8 shots in 6 minutes. I'm playing 20 minutes a game, or whatever it may be. Let's see here. I'm going to look for last night. I know he played a little bit more, 26 minutes last night, but I'm playing extended minutes. I can still hunt my shot, but I can do it more in the flow of the offense. I can also look to get my teammates involved. I can drive to the basket and dish or try to score. And what you're seeing, I think, is the example of what what Isaiah Evans could be. Knock on wood, don't know if this is going to happen. Should he return, for a second season at Duke and be more of a focal point on the offense? Now, there's a lot of talk now. NBA scouts are seeing what he's doing, and that his name's starting to creep up there on draft boards. Because, hey, look, if you shoot 45+% from behind the arc, you can do that at any level. You're gonna make some money. And so, anyway, it's been awesome to see the maturation of Isaiah Evans over the last 6 weeks to 2 months.
Yeah, and in so many ways, this is the guy that we kind of expected to see, right? I mean, you look at the Duke recruiting rankings when you profiled them from a season ago, it was Cooper Flagg and then Isaiah Evans. Those were the 2 guys that were McDonald's All-Americans this past season going into the year, even ahead of Con Knippel, who is now kind of the second best draft prospect of this freshman bunch and has been throughout the course of this entire season. So in some ways, not that all surprising that we see Isaiah Evans there, knowing that it's kind of this crazy free market that takes place in the college game. We've been hearing that everybody in America is trying to call this guy and his folks to get him to play there. So there are questions to be answered about Isaiah Evans. If he's in the college game next year, I want Duke to do whatever it takes to make sure he's still playing for the Blue Devils, because I think he could be that impactful with the people that are exiting, heading off to the league, you would assume, and the type of role that he would have. He's only got to gain confidence from what he's doing as of now, and then moving forward, what does that look like next year? Because what's been impressive over the last few games, it's not just the three-point shot anymore. And I know that was the only shot that he made against Miami, but at least he's kind of attempting to get other looks, putting himself in a position to be fouled and those sort of things offensively.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I believe all Duke fans would kind of echo this sentiment, is that you hope that the decision that Isaiah makes at the end of this season is the NBA or Duke.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing you can truly hope for if you're Duke at this point, is that, that's and obviously we're going to have a lot of time to talk about these types of things.
No kidding.
The season is over. And, a guy like Isaiah, and we've seen this in the past, a guy like Isaiah has a game in the NCAA tournament where he has a night like this, right? Where, in a tighter game, he goes 5 for 8 from 3 and, is a major part of what Duke does. And all of a sudden that draft stock, it seems to, to rise even quicker when you do it in March. And so, you could see that. And then, but the reverse is also true, not that he has to play bad, but I mean, if the way the games flow, if that breakout type thing does not happen, you don't know what that does. And so there's a lot of basketball left to be played, hopefully, for this Duke team. And it'll be a chance for Isaiah to showcase, what he can do. And I think, Duke fans have gotten used to this. It's like we want the absolute best for every one of the guys that come through Durham. And if that means that he gets a really good, draft status and ends up going in the draft, then so be it. But like I said, I think all Duke fans would say, they hope the decision is NBA draft or return to Duke. And that's the decision that he's making. So we'll see. We will see. Time will tell.
Yes, we absolutely will. So let's look at this Duke team also in the lens of in that backcourt. Now that you've got Tyrese Proctor leaving with an injury, uncertain when he could return, if he's going to miss time at all of those things at play here. Even before the injury took place, his backcourt mate in Caleb Foster came in way earlier in this Miami game than we were used to seeing over the last few. He hadn't scored in the first half since the SMU game, 1st of January. He was able to kind of do that his first possession in this Miami game, finishes with 10 points. What are you seeing from Caleb Foster lately?
Well, you're seeing the confidence return is what I'm seeing. And you're seeing the trust being built back between him and his teammates, him and his coach, him and the coaching staff. I agree. Getting him in early in the game was a good thing to see. And then I also appreciated the 3 assists to 1 turnover last night. And then also at least one of the threes that he hit, I know it was in the second half and the game was kind of out of hand, but it was a step back, like right in someone's face. And, you like to see those confident shots as opposed to, only hitting him when, he's a standstill, rotation wide open 3. And so I think all those things are good. I would like to see, I used to think, last season, actually, Caleb Foster was the guy to me that when he had the ball in his hand, I felt the best and the most secure. And, there's a little bit of him, I still think, trying to figure out, like, how does his game, mesh on the floor with Cooper and with Khan and with Isaiah and Sion and all those types of players, because, sometimes I feel like the offense is a little bit disjointed, when he's on the floor. And so I think figuring that out, depending on the status of Tyrese Proctor and depending on how, John Shire decides to go with the rotation, if Proctor happens to have to sit out a game or 2 or more, it's going to be interesting there. But I love what I'm seeing from Foster. His teammates are all behind him. You see the bench go crazy anytime he scores. And this is exactly, JJ, we sat here 3-4 weeks ago and we both said, we just hope that he can work his way back into the rotation and that he doesn't give up. And he hasn't given up, and he has worked his way back. And you never know, man. There may be a game in this ACC tournament. There may be a game coming up in the NCAA tournament where, Foster has a stretch where he is just vital for this team.
I'm hoping that's the case. I think we're trending in that direction. Saw from his last 3 games, he's played 37 minutes of basketball, scored 33 points, 13 of 21 from the floor. That's 62%, 6 of 10 from 3-point range, 6 assists, 2 turnovers, 5 rebounds. Duke is plus 17 in his last 37 minutes out there on the floor. So clearly something's working as of late. The ball handling in particular, Josh, there have been a couple of stretches in these last few games where you could see Caleb Foster kind of dancing out there a little bit, seeing if he's still got some of the moves and whatnot. And it's like, all right, slow down just a little bit there. Yep. But that's just what he wants to do. He wants to score. He wants to attack. And when he's doing that effectively, man, it's scary for this Duke team.
Yeah, he brings he's a bigger guy than what he kind of looks. He's 6'5" and he's strong, and I believe he does a really good job once he gets in the lane when he has the scoring opportunity. Now, I think an area that pretty much every player in college can improve upon is when you get into the lane and you're looking to score and it's not there. The ability to really quickly make those decisions on getting the ball to your teammates. I think that's something that, like I said, I think that's 90% of college basketball players are trying to improve that. But you're right. Caleb does a great job. He finishes strong when he goes to the hole, and he does bring in a dimension to this team that I don't believe anybody else necessarily does. He has a unique game.
Without a doubt. All right, let's step aside. One more break here on today's show, and then we'll start to wrap up our conversation here today with our pal Josh Cox when we return here in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils is brought to you by our friends over at Roy. Attention Duke fans, the future of college sports is here, and it's transparent. Before the Roy app, NIL negotiations often happen under the table. Fans didn't have a clear way to directly support the athletes they love. Now with Roy, you get to be the part of the change and support Duke athletes in the most transparent way possible. Roy, the NIL app, allows you to choose the player you want to support, decide how much to contribute, receive exclusive content from the athletes you back, and so much more. The best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. It's a risk-free way to show your support. For a limited time, Roy is matching up to $100 per Duke fan. That means your impact is doubled, helping to keep your favorite players right where they belong with Duke University in Durham. The Roy app is giving fans control, no more uncertainty. Now you can provide transparent, impactful support and help shape the team and the future of college sports with your contributions. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Locked On Blue Devil athletes the way they deserve: the transparency, trust, and a real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. Roy is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Thank you again so much for making Locked On Blue Devils your first listen and first watch each and every day. For your second listen today, I'd encourage you to go and check out Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. Don't wait for March. Do it right now. Be the most informed college basketball fan. Duke, one of the top teams in the entire country, so I promise you they're talking a whole lot about the Blue Devils over at Locked On College Basketball. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Check it out. Leave them a 5-star rating and written review. Subscribe to their channel as well. Locked On College Basketball. Listen to it right after today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, let's keep this thing rolling. We've got Josh Cox here with us. We're talking Duke basketball following their win over Miami. Now they've got Florida State coming up this weekend. 3 games played away from Cameron Indoor for Duke. When you look at Virginia up at Madison Square Garden and then at Miami, now they've got back-to-back home games. The very quick Saturday, Monday turnaround against Florida State and Wake Forest. Florida State is set to go through a coaching change at the end of the year. Wake Forest has definitely fallen off the wagon, but they had a really testy game with the Blue Devils the first time those two teams met in Winston-Salem. And yet everybody in the basketball world truly believes Duke should take care of business. They should be able to handle these things when you look at where they're at simply compared to the rest of the league.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Florida State's coming off a loss to Carolina earlier this week. But here's the thing. I believe both Florida State and Wake Forest, both could potentially, if they play, their game and Duke doesn't, it could get a little dicey. Cameron's been very friendly to Duke this season, but I think there's also the coming into Cameron and they've got something to prove, and Cameron's an easy place to shoot and things like that Duke is a beneficiary of, but so are their opponents sometimes. And so, especially Wake Forest, and I know we'll have time to probably talk about Wake Forest, later on before that game, closer to that game, but still, they have the talent, man. They do. I was high on them heading into the season, and as you mentioned, they've underperformed. I believe the talent that's on that squad, and so you never know how that's going to go. But yeah, Duke heads into this Florida State game. You're right, Leonard Hamilton on his way out, looking to kind of do a complete change there, and Shout out to Leonard Hamilton, by the way, the youngest looking dude in his like mid to late 70s I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, this is a little bit of a different Florida State team. This is not that typical Florida State team that, seems to have like multiple 7-footers along the front court and those types of things. But Duke's still got to go out and win the basketball game. And, you are getting a little bit of the vibe with this Duke team that it's like Duke could go out and play a game that's not their best and still they should win. And I don't disagree. Duke should win. There's so many offensive weapons on this Duke team, and they play such good defense that like those things don't tend to let teams upset you at home much. And so that would be my thing for Duke, is just continue to do what you're doing on defense. You're going to have your 2 or 3 offensive players that have the good game, and just don't screw it up. Rebound the basketball. Do all the little things. Don't mess it up.
Right. I was talking about this on yesterday's show with Jordan, and looking at this Duke team down the stretch here. Most importantly, the number one thing to have happen is to win a national championship, obviously. But we're greedy in this, right? So wanting to win out, wanting to win the ACC regular season, setting this record, getting to beat Carolina for a second time, running through the ACC tournament, and then on to postseason as well. The other factor in all of this is, man, how cool would it be for Cooper Flagg to win this National Player of the Year award? What a heated race we've got going on between him and Johni Broome. And I really do believe that Cooper Flagg would benefit from another high-scoring game where he can help pad his stats a little bit, put on an epic performance, even though it's going to be against some lowly ACC teams. Again, Cooper cannot control what the other team does. But simply put, if you're able to do something like that, I think that's big. The only caveat is that means he's out there for longer. You don't want to risk injury. Getting the wins are most important. But I'm kind of caught up in all of this, man. I know that Duke, the team, Cooper, not worried about that whatsoever. But we're crazy fans here, man. And that's what we kind of talk about, is accomplishing all of these things. That's the next box for me to check off, is I really want Cooper to have another high-scoring game, because I think that would really help him.
Yeah, for sure. And this is to take nothing away from Johni Broome. I mean, Johni Broome is an incredible basketball player.
Sure.
And Auburn is an incredible team, and the SEC is an incredible conference. Like, let's just get that out there. Like, it is different, right? Then this has been a major shift.
Yes.
For this season. I mean, Auburn is playing, the likes of Alabama and Florida and Kentucky and Texas A&M and Missouri, and going down
all these teams.
Line, right? Of teams that they're playing that are not easy wins by any stretch of the imagination. And the ACC, unfortunately for Cooper Flagg, Coach Shire doesn't have to play Cooper Flagg for 38 minutes a game because, as we mentioned, the last 5 games, Duke's won by like 30 points, an average of 30 points. And so, that doesn't help him as far as the stats. Now, I will say this. I believe that there's got to be a little bit of the eye test that goes into a voter's perspective. And when you look at the eye test of the game that Cooper Flagg plays and the game that Johni Broome plays, in my opinion, that's where Cooper Flagg absolutely differentiates himself. And that's, once again, that's not to take anything away from Johni Broome. But Cooper Flagg's game is on a different level. And he's, I don't know if this matters, but he's 18 years old. He's a young 18-year-old.
Yeah.
And, that's different than a 22, 23-year-old Johni Broome. Once again, I'm not taking anything away from him. But all that to say, I agree with you. It'd be nice if Cooper could have one of those games where he's just kind of unconscious and he just shows the nation again that, like, hey, I'm the best player in the country. Like, there's a reason why, people are trying to play capture the flag, in the NBA, right? There's a reason. There's a reason why the Spurs have shut down Wemby. There's a reason why, all these other teams are like trying to figure out a way to lose as many games as possible because they know they don't have a chance and they want to get Cooper. So, anyway, I do agree with you. It'd be nice to see Cooper get the National Player of the Year. It'd be nice to see Duke sweep through the rest of the season. But ultimately, number 6. Number 6 is the focus. I know it is for John Shire, for this team, and probably is for 90% of the fan base. Yeah.
We just got to talk about those other fun factors that are involved there. 5 games for Cooper Flagg, scoring over 25, 3 so far for Johni Broome. Johni Broome, 31 points is his most in the season. Cooper Flagg's got 42. So from a scoring perspective, we've seen Cooper kind of take over there, and hopefully that continues in these final few games. Josh, man, it is so good to see you as always. Tell folks about all the work that you got going on and how they can support you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, during basketball season, I follow my guy Freddie at Duke Report. I help him out with some of the home games there, and so make sure you're following along there. Then on the football side, at Duke FB Talk. In the off season now, but we'll get rolling again. Spring ball starting, and we'll see if spring games happen. They're canceling all over.
Yeah,
the
those
country.
don't really happen in the sport these days.
Yeah, and I understand it. I completely get it. I would love to actually. This is a podcast for a different day. Would love to see a revamped schedule for college football for the off season. But anyway, yeah, you can find us there. And JJ, I appreciate it as always for having me on, man.
Good to see you, man. We'll talk soon. Okay.
All right, we'll see you.
All right, that's Josh Cox joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Always appreciate his time joining us here on the program. Thank you for your support, as always, as well. Subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils, wherever it is that you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube page. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you, and good day.